Good evening, everybody. It is June 17th, and this is our last meeting of the academic school year. We start by reading our vision statement. The Ashland Public Schools cultivates the academic and social-emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV, and our order of business this evening is our open session call to order, opening procedures including agenda review and adoption. There'll be time for public comment and items of interest to the public and administrative items, including the superintendent's update, COVID-19, Ashland High School handbook, Mendez School Building Committee update, Shawmut Compass, MASC, MASS Joint Conference 11.3 to 11.6, ESSER 3 funding and spending recommendation, Assistant Superintendent update, warrant approvals, and the consent action include approval of minutes May 20th, 2021, June 3rd, 2021, acceptance of gifts and donations if there are any, committee reports of activities, member updates, action items, and then we'll move to go into executive session under section 21A3 to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares, and not to return to open session. And this is regarding the Ashland Schools custodian and maintenance workers. So I will take the roll call and just make sure you're all okay with the order of business this evening. Tina Fatanides.
Here and yes.
Thank you. Mark Terry.
Here and yes.
Paul Kendall.
Here and yes.
And Aaron Williams, I do not see. And so before we get started, I really, since it is our last meeting and before we all get tired at the end of the meeting, listen to each other, there's Aaron Williams, so I'm going to let her in. I really just wanted to say thank you to all of you on behalf of the school committee. You know, it's been a year for everybody, and we want you to know how much we appreciate you. All of you who have been attending all these meetings for a year or more, Kelly and Jen and Sarah and Mike and Claudia and Pete and Dave and Lisa Bowden, who I don't see here now, and Stephen, and of course, Mike and Jim and Chris, and all of your support staff and teachers. Just really thank you. It's been a lot, and we know that you've worked harder than ever, and we know that's true for your teachers as well, and everyone is looking forward to some very much needed time off, and just really appreciate keeping it together, and seeing your faces, I think, all along has made it feel like a real collaborative effort, and that we were all in it together. And certainly even, you know, we all had lots of input from parents and students, and it was just hard for everybody on every level, and just tried to remind everybody that I heard from that, you know, you all are human beings that were experiencing this pandemic right along with everybody else, and everybody was doing their best all along. So I won't go on and on, but I really just wanted to take a minute, since this was the last meeting of the year, to express our appreciation for all of you. Thank you for devoting yourselves to Ashland, and I really, really, really do hope that you're able to forget about it for a while this summer. So thank you for that, and I will pass it along to you then, Jim. First, I'll see if there's any members of the public that want to make any comments. Don't believe I see any, but I will ask. And seeing none, I will pass it along to you, Jim, and also Aaron and Karen and WACA, you too. I don't want to miss anybody. I hate when you start naming names, but you know, I really, if you're watching and I forgot you, you're in all of our hearts, and we really do appreciate all of you. So thank you. And I'll pass that along to you now, Jim.
Great, thank you. COVID update. We're done. Today, actually, we had our results. Our last pool testing of just student athletes came back all negative. We got the results this morning. It was certainly, we're waiting to get through all of this. And I as with you, Lori, the admin team is here and they've been here for the last 15 months at every one of these meetings. And I told them yesterday in a different setting that I truly appreciate the amount of time and effort that each one of them has put into this this year, starting back last March, April, May, when we really started thinking about how were we going to open up the schools. So I couldn't be more proud of every single one of them and the work that they put in, and our teaching staff, support staff, and nurses, et cetera. They deserve all of the kudos and the gratitude that I think our community has. They deserve it more than anyone. So that being said, we are moving forward. The year has ended. It ended well yesterday. And I think what you said was important. Everyone needs a little bit of downtime to, I think more than anything, step back and actually think about really the incredible job that everyone did and able to get us through school. I mean, I said to the teachers, did anyone really think we were going to get past, Halloween? And here we are, in June, saying, as Mike and I walked through the schools yesterday, talking to teachers and how grateful they were that the approach we took as a district and the ability that each principal relayed messaging constantly to staff and to students and to the community. So that is where we are. Hopefully in the fall, we're not dealing with too many of these conversations. We had our final wrap up meeting with the commissioner yesterday afternoon. And to say that, we know what's going to happen in the fall would be a gross, it'd be a misstatement. We don't know. I mean, he was pretty clear that while the numbers and the projections are really great right now, and June 15th, basically everything opened up. We will wait until the beginning of August, as the department will then make decisions on certain things like masking and distancing and things of that nature. So that is it. Questions on COVID? And no new cases. So, but I didn't run a report for you this week. So, and you know what? Where I started that, Ed, Audrey, and the nursing staff, seriously, phenomenal work. And again, it was a team effort, and they kept us in the loop every step of the way, and the amount of hours and excess hours that they put in every single day to ensure our faculty, students, and staff were safe is beyond belief, to be honest with you. So I love them both, but I will not miss talking to them for a while this summer. So we'll go from there. So, okay, that's all I got.
Yeah, and of course, Ed and Audrey were so amazing, and they have not been at the last few meetings, which is a good thing. There's a good reason for that, and I'm sure that they're not missing us too much either. But thank you to both of you if you're watching, and all of your teams, and we know that you had people working with you. So thank you.
Mr. Adams, will you be continuing the dashboard weekly, even though school's out?
Most likely not. No, not at this point in time. Unless I'm being told I need to. So.
And who would you be reporting it to?
I would just send it out to the community. That's all I would do.
You gonna tell Jen about it or something? Yeah. I mean, sending out our community stats to community when we're not in schools.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I mean, if that's the wish, I certainly can make time in my schedule to do the data.
I do think it could be an early predictor for us, though, just because, and I would say by just to consider. we've still had children masked in schools. You're going to have them unmasked at camp. You're going to have them unmasked in stores now, which is a different operating environment than what we had in the school building. And so I think seeing the true impact of the opening before we get to August to kind of gauge how we think the school year might go, and combine that with the guidance coming from DESE, I wouldn't stop doing it at this point. Jim, if you want to take a break, I'll take it back over for the summer.
Well, the data's not going away, right? So why would he do it weekly when he can always, if we want to know in preparation for a retreat or something like that, you can go back and plug in the data, right? There's not a real need for it to be ongoing and have him do this rote work weekly for really no value on an ongoing basis. It's more to your point, which is a good point. We'll be able to look at that data to try to see if there was any changes in our community data during that time. But to continue doing it, I think Jim, if anybody needs to unplug, I mean, Jim does. So.
I tend to agree with Paul. I think, that I am concerned about the fall, but I don't want to be concerned about it today. And, even if we were to get weekly numbers, like we do now, they really aren't going to tell us much until we get closer to school and have to make final decisions. I'll also tell you, and I look at those numbers personally almost every day, and I look at the weekly stuff as well. I don't look at Ashland's numbers weekly because Jim provides them, but I know where to find them pretty easily at mass.gov. And I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to see something different within our immediate community than is reflected statewide. As long as those percent positive numbers are where they are now, which are pretty easy for us to track. I want to give Jim as much time as possible, during the summer. And even if this only takes you 20 minutes, I don't know what it takes you, Jim. I don't want to ask him to do that. I think.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think we just need to take it off. I don't think he needs to have anything on his plate right now.
If we just the update for when we have retreat, and also Jim, I can prep it for us when we get there. But I do think we will have 6 weeks of data to review, and that reviewing it at the retreat might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think a number of us, like Mark, maybe for work, and I know I'm constantly looking at the state website and the news or whatever. I think if there are any changes of concern, that we would be on it, and we would be trying to process it and trying to decide, what needs to happen next. And certainly when it comes time to prepare for the meeting in August, we'll gather whatever information that we think is going to be helpful to making decisions for September. But I think in fairness, and just also given where we were at with COVID, obviously last summer was a different story, but I think now is the right time to release everybody, including you, even Erin, from any obligation of trying to assemble any info. I don't think there's anything that anybody can actually do with it until later. And as we know, things in this world, in this realm, can change in 24 hours. So putting all the time and effort into something that we don't really need until a few months from now, I would not be in favor of asking you, Erin, or anybody to do it. No. Anybody else on that, or on the COVID-19 before we move on to the handbook stuff? Okay, Kelly, is that you?
It is. Hi.
Hello.
So I will give credit to Erin Cameron for putting this together, and her committee. Typically every year, the deans form a committee of teachers and students to review our handbook and talk about any updates or changes that we think are important. I feel like we did start that process a little late this year, just given everything else that was going on. And when they started really kind of digging into it, really looked at everything from an equity lens as they were reading the handbook. And so there's a lot more that they want to do and we want to look at, but they kind of shared the highlights of things that they would like to make sure changed or at least looked at by the committee in terms of things that are related to your policies and how they impact our handbook for the coming year. So do you want me to share the document with the highlights? Jim, it looks like you gave me access. Nope. Can't tell if you're talking because it's
You should be all set.
okay.
Yeah.
So you should be able to see it now.
Yeah, it's there.
So as you know, our handbook is broken out into a couple different appendices, but in the main portion of the handbook, a lot of the language, which is I know similar across the district, the hope was to add in an additional statement into just our general statements of code of conduct. And that came about probably primarily because of the way we were learning this year, but it's certainly not new to this year. Some of the incidents and discipline that we were faced with were things that often happen outside of school. And we have the discussion with students when those types of things happen about what the impact within the school building is. So the committee spent some time drafting some language that you can see there. That just really talks about what our ability and what our purview is to act on any kind of incidents that happen outside of school. Often it's related to social media. And we have always, when dealing with these type of incidents, dealt with them, as an educational component and a chance to sit with students and talk about how something they might have done in social media impacts the whole school community when there's a statement made that could be offensive, to a certain group within the school community, et cetera. So they thought it was important and we spent a lot of time this year from a couple different situations, explaining that process to students, whether in small groups or the bigger community. And helping them understand what our rights and obligations are as a school, as administration and as a school community. So we felt it was important to add a statement around that. And then we also had a lot of discussion this year about our use of the Say Something app, which we do find important and useful from a life safety point of view. And that's why we got the app in the first place. But found this year, perhaps it was used in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended to. So we do, find the value in that reporting, but also want to make sure that we have documented what we can and can't do with that information and when it is helpful to us. So they added the statement around, if there's things that are concerning but not of life safety, that app is not the place to use it, and that it would be something that students or families would want to report directly to 911. The example of a party was used there, and that we received several anonymous tips, and the way the app works is we don't receive those till 6 a.m. on a Monday morning. So if it's something that's happening on Friday night, it's really not something that the school administration would address. And that was something that we received a lot of questions and had a lot of conversation on from students and parents this year about why weren't we addressing certain things that were reported, on the weekend, whether it would be things that were happening within the community or things that were happening on social media. So that's kind of the first area that's kind of the main body of the handbook that the committee, our group wanted to have changed. Any questions on that? And I should preface all of this with saying we have not had our attorney review our handbook. We usually do that in the summer and intend to do so. All right, the next part, the community service requirement is something that is a graduation requirement. So we would not be able to propose changing it or adjusting it, but we did spend time both as a site council and the handbook committee looking at that requirement. And currently it's a graduation requirement. On the language in the policy, the school committee policy, as well as in our handbook, does state that it is a graduation, that is a requirement for students to receive senior privileges. Again, looking at kind of the impact of the pandemic and what that meant for community service. And I know you as a committee waived this requirement for the last 2 years as a graduation requirement. And we're asking to consider that as a permanent waive and instead keep it as a requirement for senior privileges. We did see the kind of glaring discrepancy between the students that have the family support and the ability to access community service opportunities versus the students that did not have the parental support or the community support and the ability to get out there and find time to do the community service and make sure they met that commitment. We do feel strongly that it is an important aspect of our school community, and we do not want to say that we do not want students to do community service. We do not want to get rid of the requirement entirely, but we would like to consider making it, making the only motivator senior privileges, which it is very motivating. Our numbers were far higher students that had not completed this year because everyone had privilege. But as we go back to having senior privilege as something that students learn, we would imagine that our numbers of having most of our seniors have it completed by the beginning of senior year will return. But again, that's also part of your policy. So something that the policy committee, I'm sure, would have to review.
Yeah, so Kelly, I'd like to, maybe we'll schedule something and talk about it, because I'd be wanting more to look at what if there's, we've talked a ton on this committee and other places about civic engagement and all those things. And I'd want to explore if supports are needed in partnerships with the Y is going to be, I actually just met with somebody from the Y this morning. So that's going to be opening as well. And maybe, we can do more to support the ones that are struggling and don't have the other supports, because if we're not doing that, we almost continue the cycle of disengagement by certain demographics and populations of students, right? So to help break that, I think if the pandemic has shown a light on some gaps that we have with supports, I'd like to see how we can fill those gaps of support to really get those students that don't have that other support, because those are probably the students that will grow up to be adults that aren't engaged as well. And so, I'd like to have more conversations on how we can make sure it's happening, and not just for senior privileges, because that's still going to be a gap. They're still not going to get the support. That doesn't address the gap, right? It's just making it so that the benefit is different, but it's still going to present the same gaps of the same students that aren't going to be able to, that we're struggling to get it for graduation, are going to struggle to get it for senior privilege. And, that's equity stuff that we talk a lot about. So
I agree. I'd be happy to have that conversation. It's a far smaller number that are struggling prior to graduation than it is for the senior privilege piece. And if we're talking about 5 or 10 students that we might be talking about withholding the diploma from, that's kind of where we want to have the conversation.
I just add my voice. I agree 100% with what Paul said. I really, I think the community service is really important. And I certainly would want to look for a solution to the problem rather than just doing away with it. If it feels like it's a longer term examination and we need to change it for a year and then come back to it, I think I could be open to that. But I'd rather find a solution to the problem than sort of move the obligation to engage in community service. I just think it's that important.
I do want to add like just a few things here. This isn't coming up for the first time. It's been discussed at length and in depth every year that I've been on the high school site council. So all of these things have been considered, and I think that it doesn't mean that the conversation shouldn't still continue, and especially if we're going to formulate another policy, the school committee needs to understand, what we're doing and why, and who it benefits and so forth. But I do just want to highlight the fact that, a lot of really, and I know nobody's suggesting otherwise, but a lot of really smart people have spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to do this. And at least, and this is my bottom line take on it, there is no perfect way to do this. Every possible scenario has been explored, and it doesn't mean the school committee can't find the one that we're most comfortable voting on a policy and so forth. But this isn't like, opening the conversation at this point. Maybe for some of us it is, but it's been discussed. And I think the reason why what's being recommended is because there really isn't a perfect way to do this. I mean, you have the issue of, and any of us who had our kids go through the high school, and especially like me, if you have a house full of all kinds of different kids, some kids really get a lot out of that requirement. And other kids in my house and in the building are rubber stamping it just so they can get the hell out of there, and that's not really what we want either. But at the same time, within that group, you might find somebody who was forced to do it, who, and that's really what you want. It's not the people who are going to do these things anyway. It's the people that don't have other opportunities to be exposed to community service. And how can we make sure that that happens? So really only saying that this recommendation is coming our way after a lot of the conversations that you all want to have already occurred. And they do need to occur at our level as well, because we're the ones that are ultimately voting on a policy. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. But Kelly, the second thing also was a timing question, because how soon do you and your graduating students need to know what's what? Like, do you need to know before? Because we're not meeting again until our retreat. And there won't even be a full policy subcommittee until the retreat, when we appoint the next person that's going to take the spot of Kathy Bates. So there's not even a policy subcommittee that can entertain it right now. So at the earliest, this conversation for school committee will start in August. And is that too late for you?
I don't think so. And I think like any, bigger change, and I think a graduation requirement is a big change. I would be comfortable with entertaining it as something that might be, for the incoming class, or something that we're going to look at, phasing in, as opposed to,
Okay. So it can stay as is until we have our process, and,
Right.
But, okay. And
Right.
Certainly it would be extremely helpful, like Paul suggested, for you to be part of the conversation, so you can provide the
Right.
context for the conversations that have already occurred. Yeah, I
Right.
wasn't present for all of them, but I was present for some of them. And I know that you all have looked at this for years.
Right. And I don't think there's a person that didn't think it should remain as a requirement on some level, and that we should be finding ways to provide more access and more opportunities for all students.
Right. It's just, what do you connect it to? And then maybe what additional supports can we offer to make sure that everybody has the experience? And I know it's not always possible, and it depends on your organization and your community partners, but sometimes, if you do partner with people, and we can do it on a larger scale and make sure everybody gets some exposure to this or that. But those are conversations down the line. And I just wanted to add that for context. But from our perspective, we'll get a policy subcommittee together in August, and then those people will get in touch with you, and you can take it from there.
Thank
Does
you.
that sound like a good plan to everybody else? Are you guys all okay with that?
Yes.
The next piece, which is under our academics appendix, is to add a piece to the academic eligibility for student participation in extracurricular activities. And I will say, for the most part, we're probably already doing this. It just isn't written. But we have, for many of our clubs and activities, you're just hoping to make it really explicit what the expectations are, that, a club that meets after school once a week does follow the same guidelines that are, written down by the MIAA in terms of students have to meet certain, behavior expectations, academic expectations, etc. So they just hope to add a piece to the handbook that encourage club or ask that, require that club and activity advisors put those signed agreements in place. And our bigger clubs already do that. Stuco does it, Make-A-Wish does it, some of the bigger groups kind of just really spell it out for students so they understand you do need to meet these guidelines. If you're playing on the football team, you're in the chess club once a week, you have the same expectations for participation. The next piece under the Appendix B, which is our discipline section. We currently have it broken down into 4 different classifications, A through D, that are pretty much, A is the most significant discipline issues, D is more minor, a tardy, something like that. And they really just wanted to kind of reformat that into a list of the more significant behaviors. The committee spent a lot of time looking at a lot of handbooks from area districts. Again, a lot of this conversation came from confusion around some of the different incidents that might have happened this year. And one incident could fall under 3 different classifications, kind of depending on the severity. So looking at maybe a broader list or set of behaviors that could result in a suspension or expulsion. A couple of years ago, under the advice of do away with, we used to have a set number of days per type of incident, and we kind of did away with that and made it a more broad range, up to 10 days for anything that's a more serious offense. So just looking at kind of redesigning just the structure of those basically behaviors, and listing some of the more serious, but not necessarily classifying them at different levels of seriousness. And then in our discrimination and harassment policy, we saw kind of a hole in just having, we wanted to have bias incident spelled out. It's not there currently. So they drafted a description of bias incident that they're hoping to have added to the handbook.
Can you scroll down?
Oh, yep, sorry about that. Evidently, I can't. There we go. Come on. Hold on a minute. And then the final area that the committee looked at was our dress code. And again, looked at it from a lens of equity that felt like some of the language that's currently in there was very biased towards the female students. And so really kind of wanting to find some language that was more neutral again, the language that was proposed here was pulled from other area handbooks other high schools. But really looking at, okay, what is it, is there clothing that is, discriminatory in nature that could be considered offensive? And again, how does that impact the classroom environment or the whole school environment? Taking out some of the real specific language about length and what is and isn't being covered, etc.
So Kelly, you're going to have this reviewed by John Foskett's office, right?
We are,
Okay.
yes.
I just have some concerns about the ambiguity of terms like offensive, disrespectful. Those are terms that, so a lot of that's the eye of the beholder. And,
Exactly.
While I absolutely trust the intentions here and your ability to implement that consistent with a rational line of thought, I think when you get some ambiguous terms like that, it's ripe for people making accusations about, well, your offensive is my, something else, and I'll be interested in seeing how John looks over that, or John, somebody in his office, provides feedback on that section.
We will be too. I know the committee had a lot of discussion about how to best phrase that.
Yeah.
And I do think some of that language already is in our handbook. And, we certainly, it is a rare occasion that dress code is something that students are ever disciplined for. It's, again, always an educational discussion. But to have something written based on whoever is the person in the building, I think of a discussion that I had just this week with one student reporting an offensive shirt, and that it made the student feel uncomfortable. And when I talked to the student wearing the shirt, the student had absolutely had every right to wear this shirt because it was, made one other person, and we were able to have a discussion on why someone may or may not feel uncomfortable because of what was on the shirt, but it wasn't anything that was discriminatory in nature or something that we would absolutely say, put something else on. And we had a second conversation with a student who had some colorful language on their shirt, and that was an easy, put something else on over that. So, but yes, I think we're trying to take away the language that currently seems to be very one-sided, but are looking forward to assistance on how to best word it. And that was actually the other area when I said there was a couple of policies. There is a school committee dress code policy as well, so I don't know.
Yeah, we have.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, we have a number of policies that when we're making sure that the handbooks are crafted appropriately, that these need to tie back into, I think it's policy JK and JIC are the two policies that relate specifically to student conduct. So whenever we make adjustments to the handbook, we certainly want to make sure they're in alignment with that. And again, to Lori's point, we probably won't, these will have to be some of the first policies along with some that Kathy Silva has given us that we need to look at probably in August as soon as we can get a group together. So.
Yeah, and that was going to be the one question I had for you, Kelly, is, as you go and recommend these changes, is somebody already going back to the policy, our school committee policy, and ensuring if there is any overlap, making sure there's an alignment, and if we can, just not have the overlap. If one is a procedural thing for discipline, the actions taken after you decide whether it's someone going to gym for consideration or whatever. If they can be not overlapping, that's awesome. But if they are, we need to make sure they're in alignment.
Yeah.
So are we voting this, or are we just sort of first pass on this to understand where you're going, and then we'll vote it in August?
I mean, my recommendation, Mark, is that this is just really a first pass. I think to Kelly's point, I mean, we do want to run this by, John's office and in the language and making sure then it ties back into having conversations with the policy subcommittee. So because the graduation requirements obviously is a policy as well. IKF, and we just want to make sure that those are adhered to when we make adjustments. So, I mean, we're fine keeping the handbook as is going forward for this year. It's just, these are changes that have been, a couple of them have been on the back burner for a number of years. To Lori's point, we even had this conversation when I was principal. So.
Is there?
Yeah, I remember the dress code conversation too.
Yeah.
Like way back.
Yeah, it's
and
totally inappropriate. The language.
I'm happy to see the stuff directed at girls being eliminated. I've had a lot of colorful conversations with people about that, and I know
Sure.
that not everybody really agrees on that topic, but I'm certainly happy about your proposed changes. I think from the school committee, just procedural thing, I think we first have to just make sure that there's nothing that you're proposing is inconsistent with something that we already have, because if it is, we have to either agree to change it or we're not changing it, and then we need to let you know. And secondly, to Mark's point, if there's anything that needs to be reviewed from, I know there was something, Paul, you may remember what it was. I'm not remembering what it was, but earlier this year, we were talking about some policy that has some of the disruptive, offensive, disrespectful type of language in it. And we had a discussion about how that could be problematic. I mean, if you're off on a day that somebody's covering for you, Kelly, and they have a different view of what's disruptive than you do, you could just get into trouble with some of those words, but that doesn't mean that the whole thing needs to be wiped out. It's just finding the best way to say it.
I think,
So,
Lori, that was our public comment policy that we were looking at after court decision involving the Natick schools.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Right. And it's just like that is such a, like you said, Mark, in the eye of the beholder. I mean, some things are obvious, like Kelly did give a couple of examples of when, sometimes you talk about something, you understand that the intent or whatever was different than what you might have initially thought. And at other times, it's just so obvious that any reasonable person, now I'm sounding like the lawyer, like if a reasonable person would think it's disruptive, then it's disruptive. But in any event, if there's a way to say it, that the end goal is to make your life easier, so that you have policies that are buttoned up, so that you don't have people coming back to you and saying, well, that might be your view of disrespectful, but in my world, that's allowed. So it's making your life and the lives of your the people that work with you easier when you're dealing with these issues.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. So why don't we talk about it the next chance that the policy subcommittee has a chance to get together. You're not hearing anybody that has any issue with what you're proposing. It's just taking care of those loose ends.
Right.
Everyone good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then next up, we appreciate your patience while we got through some preliminary topics, the Mendez School Building Committee update.
Yeah, so first off, I'll have everyone as they talk introduce themselves, but we do have the newest member of the team online. So Phil, if you want to take a moment, maybe bring up those slides, and you and Jonathan can introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about the rest of the team as well.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Philip Conroy. I'll be the project manager for Shawmut Design and Construction. I'll be in charge of the day-to-day operations in the office for the project. I've been with Shawmut for 7 years, focused exclusively on public construction here in Massachusetts, primarily on K through 12 schools, sampling of some schools up here on the screen. And I've been in construction for the last 15 years.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Seymour. I'll be the senior superintendent on this project. I've been with Shawmut for 17 years, and I've been in the business for about 26 years. A lot of that time has been on institutional and public school work. And me and Phil have just finished our project in the last 2 years on another elementary school over in Harvard, Mass.
And in addition to John and myself, we're supported by Bob Weiss, who is an Ashland resident. He's been with Shawmut for 22 years, been in the industry for 35 plus, and he's our general superintendent. And then we also have Ryan Lynch, who I don't have a profile for. He's a project executive And he's been with Shawmut for 20 years. And he's been focusing for all those years in education.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, so, and just to put it where it is, both Lori and I could throw a stone and hit Bob's house. He's one of our neighbors. So we're really excited to have Shawmut on board, and then I'll turn it over to Bill. Do you want to bring up
Yes.
the presentation? So this will just be a general update on where we are, what things are currently looking like. We have some renderings you probably haven't seen. They'll go through some phasing, and then everybody can ask whatever questions of the team. And again, Bill, I know they've seen you before, but if you can introduce yourself, and then Mike when you get to speak as well.
I will. Thank you very much, Paul. My name is Bill Beatrice. I'm with Flansburgh Architects. I'm the project manager for the project. And as Paul mentioned, we got a little show here, and I'll just share my screen. I don't seem to have the ability to share screen. So
Hey, Jim, can you make him co-host?
He should be. I can't find.
You're a co-host, Bill.
Yeah.
yeah, the share screen. Oh, there it is. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Everyone
go.
see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, thank you. So first up, let's take a quick look at the site to orientate everyone. This is our site. The existing Mendez building is kind of dashed in here, and the plan is to build a new school behind the existing Mendez site in a phase construction. So in several phases. And at the end of this presentation, Phil can kind of walk us through those phasing diagrams. But we will be kind of constructing the new school in the back of the existing school, kind of recessing it into this hill. And we're still trying to keep a lot of the natural woodland as much as possible around the site. And all around the site to give it that kind of the school in the woods feel. We will have a access road that loops around the building entirely for some emergency services and for deliveries. It will be gated most of the day, so that's not meant to be traffic all day long. That's only for emergencies and deliveries. In general, the traffic flow will be parent drop-off. We'll enter Concord site, this end of the site, and be able to queue up along this road and for pickup and drop-off. And the bus pickup and drop-off is a whole separate queue. So those two traffic streams are separate. We have some play fields that we'll be building in the front of the school. And then we've also have some outdoor learning opportunities for the school proper. We have an outdoor courtyard in the middle of the school, and we designated this eastern portion of the site here for a kind of outdoor learning opportunity. There's some paving and some garden beds there. So looking at my apologies, it's not cooperating. Looking at the floor plans, it's a very simple two-story building. We've zoned the classrooms kind of off toward the western side of the building. They're grouped in pods by grades. And then we have the community spaces on the western side of the building, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and right at the main entry here is the admin suite. So, they have, complete control over the entrance. Then I'm just going to cycle through a couple of interior views of the proposed design. So this is the main lobby. We're going to be utilizing some wood ceilings and some wood paneling to bring some warmth into the building. Here you can see when you come in, you see there's a visual connection to the gymnasium and the cafeteria beyond. Also, as part of the program, there's two common areas or two common rooms, one on each floor. And these are adjacent to the art room. And they're basic open areas that really can serve multi-purposes, multi-functions. And again, we're bringing in some wood paneling and some wood ceilings to, again, bring that outdoors into the building. They are, as I noted, adjacent to the art room. So, you know, the art room has potential to spill out into this space as well. And then this is the art room. And here through this glass folding door, you can see that common area. So it's a, you know, open, right open space, lots of room, lots of opportunity for learning and design, flexible furniture. These tables can be moved around however they see fit. And then another nice feature, interior feature, is the music room. And the two music rooms are separated by a folding partition, and that partition can be opened up so we can create almost like a mini performance area. And so the view you're seeing here is at that little stage. We have some glass behind that stage, so you get the backdrop of those backwoods there, and it really could be a nice flexible space for the community. And then kind of shifting back outside the building, this is an aerial view of the front entry, and we can kind of see how we started to kind of see the zoning of the building itself. The classroom bays are back here toward the rear. The gymnasium, the community volume or space is at the front of the school. This is the admin area. This is the main plaza. Here you can see an outdoor learning space. This is outside the media center on the second floor, so this is totally accessible. And you can kind of see this image kind of really shows how the building is sort of grounded in the landscape and how we're trying to preserve that, that woodland as much as possible. We've highlighted a little thumbnails to give you a flavor of the design here. So in front, we will have a play area, some play structures, some climbing structures, potentially some granite benches for seating for pedestrians, and we've got some shrubbery past the building. This is a view looking from the fields at the gymnasium. You can kind of see how we've kind of broken down the scale a little bit here with this by utilizing some recessed brick coursing. The gymnasium will have, this is a clear story glazing, some translucent polycarbonate to let a lot of natural light into that gymnasium. And then this is the interior courtyard that I was referencing when we were looking at the floor plans. So again, this is kind of a nice space. It can be utilized. It has it's adjacent to the art room. So the art room spills right out into this space, as well as the common area. And the music room is beyond, is back here in this space. So it has a nice adjacency. And it also has a nice function of bringing natural daylight to the inside of the building. So I know that was kind of quick. I know we have a lot on the agenda to go through, but I will turn it over to Phil, and Phil can kind of walk us through the construction phasing. So I basically showed you the end result, but Phil's going to kind of walk us through exactly how we get there. So Phil, I'll run the show. You just tell me when to switch.
All right, so Jonathan and I are going to do a double talk here. So the overall project is going to be constructed in two major phases. The first phase being the new building construction, the second phase being the demolition of the existing school. So starting with phase one, the main goal is maximize pedestrian safety and minimize disruption to school operations. So I'll let Jonathan kind of speak more to the specifics, but those are our main goals in coming up with this plan. And this plan is fluid. We're working with Bill's team every day as the design gets finalized to make sure that our plan is sound and works with the design. So with that, I'll let Jonathan kind of walk us through a little bit.
So as Phil said, this is still a working plan that we're trying to make better and better as we continue to understand the design and how the town is set up. But our overall goal is to minimize our impact on the existing school and the surrounding neighborhoods. So there's 3 key features here I'd like to point out for you folks. One is that our construction entrance is off of, sorry, I was going to say Fairbanks, that's the school I'm on now. Is not on Concord, but on Fisk Road,
Fisk.
which is opposite of the school. So our goal is to not interfere with any of the morning and afternoon drop-offs. So by having our entrance on the opposite side helps to eliminate that. And then our truck route is also keyed into avoiding those intersections in and around those drop-off periods. We've also will be restricting our delivery hours, so we won't have trucks arriving and leaving during the morning drop-off and afternoon pickup. And then contractor parking is always a concern. So we've made plans to be able to contain all of the contractor parking within the construction site. So there shouldn't be any interference in the neighborhood roads or in the existing school area. And then, sorry, Phil, what was the last thing I'm missing here?
We've made provisions around the full perimeter of the school to facilitate egress for safety,
Right.
As well as try to provide a small space at the rear of the building for some outdoor activities. That's the green highlighted area on the drawing here.
Yeah.
So this takes us.
You currently have some picnic tables for outdoor time and everything. We're hoping to maintain that in some fashion.
So phase 1 takes us through the full construction of the building structure. So Bill, if you want to click to the next slide there.
Sure. And just so, if I could just jump in, just so everyone understands, this red line represents a fence. So the entire site is fenced in and enclosed.
Great
Correct.
point. Correct.
And then phase 2.
Phase 2, as the new school opens up, we start to minimize our construction impact area. Obviously, we're working our new fence around the existing school with a phased demolition that allows us to demolish both ends of the building. So by the time the students come back for the following fall, we'll have opened up the entire parking lot for that fall opening while we continue the rest of the demolition during the fall school session. And then there's the smallest phase, which is the 3rd phase, completes the final portions of the demolition and then gets us into the finished ball fields in the final bus loop that'll be open at the very end.
And in the final configuration of the school, there is no entry off of Fisk Road. That entrance goes away completely. And to Bill's point, every phase of construction is a 100% secure site with full site fencing. And that's kind of where we're at right now with logistics.
All right, thanks.
Paul, if you're okay, I was going to do a quick update on schedule.
Yeah, great, go ahead.
So good evening, everyone. Mike Quinlan, Senior Project Manager from Compass Project Management. We're your owner's project manager for the project. Just to give you a quick overview, I promise it won't take too long. We basically have moved into a phase, just completed a phase called Design Development that has gone off to the MSBA for their review. We've got some comments back we're going to work on responding to. But the design team from Flansburgh continues to progress the drawings, which we expect to issue an early package in August for some early site work to get construction started in about an October timeframe. So that's when Shawmut will mobilize their team and get some site work contractors out there. You'll start seeing some equipment digging to get the project rolling. And then ultimately we will continue to complete the design on the rest of the trades further and then complete that by November. Then once that gets started, basically we're looking at about a 2-year period for construction, opening in the fall of 2023. So that gives you a rough idea. We are also in the permitting process right now. We've just initiated some permitting meetings with the planning board and with Conservation Commission. So we'll still have to see a few meetings pop up in July to get that process completed. So that's the basic gist of the schedule. And I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to have us answer any questions that there might be.
Yeah, so just, so thanks everyone. Just to lay out what it means and the people here. So Phil and Jonathan are Shamit's full-time people on the project. They're going to be there every day. And then Compass is going to have another person on site every day. So Mia, we'll certainly have her and introduce her to the team. So we're going to have both representation from Shamit there every day, managing things as well as Compass. We've started conversations with the abutters and the neighbors. We've had a couple meetings with them to start having conversations around any concerns they have or questions they have about it. And, so just to lay that out to the group as far as who the people are. So there's another player that's going to be a day-to-day presence on site that you'll meet, in a subsequent meeting. So
yes,
I know
before construction gets started, you'll meet our what we call our construction site manager. She's our eyes and ears representing the town. She'll be on site every day. I will be on site 1 or 2 days a week once construction gets started. So that'll be the core team from Compass, who will be working closely with Phil and Jonathan, as well as Flansburgh and their team as well.
Yeah, and Flansburgh won't have a daily on-site presence, but Bill and Kent will, be doing oversight. Bill, you can speak to whatever frequency you'll be on site, but
it will be once a week for sure. And then of course, if things come up, then we can be on site as need be. But I mean, we don't. It's not like we hand off the project and now walk away. Right. So there's still an on-site. I mean, there's still there's still work.
No, we'll be once we get started and mobilized, we will be holding weekly meetings with the team that is here tonight, and as well as some others. And then to Bill's point, if certain things come up and we need to do other on-site meetings, those would be arranged as well. So. As well, we'll be bringing in other members of Bill's team from engineering at timely points, whether it be structural, civil, mechanical, etc.
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say. So it's not only me that's going to be there once a week, or Flansburgh that's once a week, but our consultants are also going to the site periodically to review their portion of the work of the design.
Yeah, so we're going to be ensuring that we're going to be working on what we want as the formal communication strategy, as far as both how people reach out if they have any issues, but we'll also make sure that everyone has can contact Jonathan, Phil, Mike, Mia, and myself. All right, so there's going to be lots of ways that anyone that has any questions or concerns will have real-time access to the right people, and then we're also working on how we want to proactively share information about the updates. And I actually just met yesterday, I think yesterday, with my days running together, with Ann Canton about the website and communication strategies. And Lori, I'll touch base with you. That's another thing for the school committee. She was asking me questions about. There's some tool sets we have out there that we're not using, and how we want to better leverage that. So that'll be maybe something we can do in the retreat, and talk about some of those things as well. But I know we threw a boatload of information. You probably had some questions on some of the stuff that Bill went over, and probably some stuff that Phil and Jonathan went over. So if anybody has any questions.
I would just, before we jump to questions, I would just add, oftentimes people think of construction just as it being disruptive, but there are a lot of opportunities to safely engage the kids in the process. And I know kids of this age in particular just love seeing the big equipment. So we will be looking along with, Shawmut's team to create opportunities for keeping the kids engaged in the project.
Well, I did have just a couple of questions. One, and it's kind of like to the point you were just touching on about disruption, is just noise management from a perspective of both the neighborhood, but also the kids that are in school, is one question. And the other is, Paul, you alluded to sort of trying to engage the folks in the neighborhood. I know one of the concerns over there is what happens to the construction access way after the project's done. And I don't know if there's any update on that. So I don't know if you could speak to those two issues.
Yeah,
I could
maybe go in reverse. So we don't have what it's definitely going to look like, but it's definitely a restorative. We're going to be restoring that access road area. What that means is probably a conversation that we'll have as time goes on. But certainly looking to not have this gaping hole in the woodland there. And just so it's it's going to be angled. It's going to be angled coming from Concord and towards the site, so that it's a natural and easy turn in and out of the site. It directs traffic where we want them to go. That's one thing that we didn't touch on. All the contracts and everything, there's going to be a published trucking route. So it'll be written in their contracts how they're coming to and from the site. So no one is going to be going up into the neighborhood. They're all going to be leaving the site towards Concord and going towards Fountain and things like that. So that'll all be, it's work in progress, but those will all be part of the contracts that go to the subcontractors as well. So definitely restoring that. And what was your first question?
About noise management, particularly for the kids, but also for the neighborhood.
I'll let the team answer that, because Phil and Jonathan, the construction project they're finishing up is actually a lot closer to the building, that occupied elementary school than this would be. So they can all speak to that.
So the first item, general noise in the neighborhood. So work hours will be limited to 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. and off hours work would be subject to the bylaws of the town for approval. And then any off hours work, we'd look to follow the communication protocols that we're currently working on developing to make sure that we notify individuals of that work. The second item, there are some activities that are more disruptive than others. The one that gets the most attention typically is the use of vibratory rollers to compact the soils. We find that, again, working through, a protocol channel of communication, setting expectations and informing the community that work will be occurring, again, within normal working hours, helps to kind of prepare people to be ready for that. And it comes as less of a surprise.
And the school as well, Phil, right? Like we'll be in close coordination with Claudia and her team at the school, and making sure we're sensitive to what's going on. But to Phil's point, this is very common in MSBA program, as you end up building a school usually right on the site, right next to an existing school to replace it. So there's definitely ways to make sure it doesn't have too much disruption, but let's be honest and open and transparent here that there will be some noise during certain phases that we'll have to be tracking, again, working with Claudia and her team.
And in the same respect, we know there's certain parts of the schedule of the school schedule that are already predetermined. So in a lot of cases, we're able to work around things like MCAS testing. If we know that we can know those dates ahead of time, we can work our activities in and around that. It's not uncommon to have some restricted work days when specific items like MCAS testing is happening. So that'll be all part of the communication system that gets developed.
And to what Mike alluded to, Jonathan and I just currently wrapped up building a new school 19 feet away from the existing school for the last 2 years. So we're we're well aware of the level of communication that's required and that should be expected from us.
Yeah, and that's over twice as, we're over twice the distance away from the school at this point. So, and we're going to be very proactive. We're talking about a lot of communication strategies. One thing, you know, the team didn't want to bore you with 50 slides, right? So there's lots of other things that they could have shown. They have, you know, a picture that they took of a potential entrance and a large sign out by the entrance, and we've talked about utilizing that and putting up the weekly schedule of what's happening this week. So even if you're not on email or whatever, you're walking by, you're going to know what's happening and things like that. So hopefully we're going to limit the surprises that people experience.
And I think we're going to develop an email list to sort of push out information, you know, upcoming activities, things like that on a regular basis as we get into construction. So if people want to stay informed in that regard, they'll have a conduit to do so.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move on?
That can't be it, Vanna.
I was gonna say that was too easy.
Well, your presentation was very thorough.
Yeah, I mean, so we didn't cover any of the sustainability features, but that's nothing new. We're still tracking to meet our sustainability goals with the project and everything like that. So I'm trying to think of, Claudia, did you have anything, or Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add as it relates to that the school committee might be interested in from the presentation? Or all right.
We can't hear you, Claudia, for some reason, even though you're unmuted.
Claudia, we can't hear you.
Shake your head. I think you were saying you didn't have anything to add, or is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm reading lips, that's why.
You're a good lip reader, Paul.
Good job.
Either that or she just gave up. One of the two. All right.
She knows where to find you if, or we
Yes,
know where
we
to
do.
find her if there are any questions for Claudia. Anybody
Yes.
else?
So as Mike mentioned, so we just did the design development submission to MSBA. The next submission will be at 60% construction documents. And we're looking to go through the permitting process with the planning board in July. And Concom, are we doing it at the end?
Same time frame, yep.
Or is it starts at the end of this month, though, right, Bill?
Yeah,
Conscom starts the end of this month, and then
The
everything's
28th,
wrapped
yeah.
up end of July.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, if there is nothing else, we thank you all for your time this
Thank
evening
you.
and for your time on the project. It's very exciting.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to hearing from you again. I'm sure we will.
Absolutely.
So take care, and
you.
school committee will move on to the MASC conference.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. So this is real quick. We're not actually looking to have a delegate yet appointed. We've done that. We talked about it last time, but we do have a July 15th.
Mark.
Right, nominate Mark already. We do have a July 15th deadline for an early bird special, if you will, early registration. So we are looking. Karen is looking to find out who from the committee will be attending. Will you be going in person or virtually? We have those two choices. And it's again November 3rd through the 6th at the Hyannis at the conference center.
Yeah, and I'll share with you, Tina, since the rest of us have been attending this conference for several years. Mark actually is a participant as well as he works there. But we stay at a hotel on the Cape. It's a conference center, and there are multiple classes that school committee members can take all day long on different aspects of being a board member. And you gather with school committee members from all across the state, as well as superintendents and assistant superintendents from across the state. since I've been on school committee, we've had most or all of the committee go. It's certainly not required. And although it lasts for like 4 or 5 days, we've typically gone for the first couple of nights. We go like on a Wednesday, Thursday. But certainly if there's something that's appealing to you later in the week, you can stay longer. What we've done is we gather as a group with the other school committee members on the first night. And then the second night with Ashland, we take classes for a couple of days, and then usually we're heading home Friday morning. So, and I don't think anyone needs to decide right this minute, but Karen probably does need to know within the next couple of days so that we can get the early bird rate. And anyone who's worried still about, gathering because of COVID or anything, it looks like they're offering some virtual options. So any questions that we can answer now while we're all together, and of course, Jim and Karen can follow, or me, happy to follow up with anybody who has more questions later.
Jim, I'll go in person.
Yeah, I'd love to attend as well. Yeah.
Policy is?
I'm sorry, Erin?
Is the cancellation policy any different? Like, I would love to go in person, but we also don't know what the fall is going to look like.
Fall's going to be fine.
I would imagine if it's
All
not.
of this negativity that exists, we've got to go away, right? I mean,
living in the now. For
gonna be
now,
okay.
everything is cupcake and roses. Come on.
We're having school. No one's going to be wearing masks. That's just the way it's going to be.
I can't foresee the MASC stiffen everybody if, we have some kind of second pandemic.
Yeah,
I would
Aaron,
imagine yeah. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
So I can share with you a little more detail from the board of directors meetings. The hotel is giving the MASC a very late cancellation date, like September or so, which maybe doesn't seem as late as it did me when we talked about it 4 months ago. But I think they're setting up to allow for fairly late cancellations, and in terms of what it really costs us, it's the hotel. So I think it's really about the hotel canceling. And I can tell you in the past, I've had times where my plans have changed, where I thought I'd be there for 2 or 3 nights and I only end up going up 1. And I've been able to cancel even in the past, just a couple of weeks ahead of time. So I don't think that'll be a major concern, but I suspect that the actual registration information that the MASC sent out might have more on that for the website. I think everybody's well aware of the sort of transitional nature of where things are right now, and knows that they've got to protect against that to get people to sign up. So I can't promise you anything.
I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I was just saying I can't promise anything, but I think the concern is noted and planned for.
Yeah, and sometimes like in a non-COVID world, the concern is on the other end. Like if we don't decide early and book our room, we've decided too late in the past, and you can still attend the conference, but not stay. You might not have our choice to stay where we want to be. So, my feeling is that anyone who thinks they might be able to go, it's better to reserve our spot. And then certainly if anything that comes up, they can accommodate us, hopefully. And anyone who's pretty sure that they're not comfortable with it, again, it's not required. It's really only, it enriches, our individual and collective knowledge on all different kinds of topics. So.
Yeah, and I think I remember the one year we stayed at a hotel off campus, if you will. We didn't stay at the resort, right? So, and it's certainly better to stay on site.
Yeah. So if you know now, one way or the other, please let Karen know so she can book for you, and we'll just hope for some flexibility if anything comes up. And things have come up with some of us for other reasons, and we'll work with it.
Well, I'm in for all part in person. I just was trying to hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah, I'm in as well too. I'm looking forward to it and keeping fingers crossed that the in-person component of it stays as is.
It is nice to gather in person there. So, okay, good.
So that might be everybody, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, Karen, can you sign us all up, please? So then you don't have to worry
we'll
about
take care of it.
emails. Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you very much.
We'll take it.
Next up, Esser, Jim?
Yeah, just a follow-up from our conversation a couple weeks ago. Let me just share this with you. As you know, we talked about ESSER 3 and the funding that's coming into grant funds. It's actually due to be released, I think, later in the summer in terms of the funding. But one of the requirements was to have community input and community feedback. We did a survey. I held a forum on Monday evening for the community to participate and provide input. So, you know, this is just sort of the sharing that I provided the group on Monday about allowable uses. We went over this before. The requirement of 20% of the total 750,000 to address learning loss, and we must seek community input. And I wanted to share with you some of the information that came out of the survey. There were 275 responses, and you know, 66% of those responses, they were allowed to choose three, their top three choices. 66% said hiring more middle school staff to reduce class size for more direct instruction would be appropriate. 41% said providing more student mental health services and supports to connect students to behavior and mental health supports and services. School facilities repairs and improvements all came in at 41%. Continued COVID pool testing, 19%. Purchasing of more technology, 31%. And the purchase of disinfectants and sanitizing supplies, about 13%. And what I explained to the community on Monday was that whatever we decide as a district, we are going to try to get the biggest bang and the greatest bang for our buck with the focus on student achievement and that learning loss. And I think some of the questions that were sent in advance dealt with extended day. Are we able to provide additional staffing and funding for extended day? And the answer is yes. We can use these funds to help offset some salaries, as for instance, using tutoring as part of extended day. So after school programming and preschool and before school programming, we can offset some of the salaries to these folks. IT infrastructure for users access to virus-prone websites. As you know, we increased our bandwidth. That was the concern. We're actually doing this. You voted at the last meeting to allow us to purchase a more updated and robust firewall. So we've already done this. Mask wearing, what will happen in September. I can tell you the commissioner yesterday in his final words of wisdom to all superintendents yesterday afternoon told us that mask wearing at this point in time, K through 12, pre-K through 12 is not going to be required as of today. That being said, he also said, I'll let you know in August if we change our mind. ESSER 3 money, can it be used for air conditioning and buildings and climate control? The survey happened to go out as we were, you know, in the middle of those 3 really warm days. And these were actually comments made by educators. I was able to go back and look at the survey. So those were some of the concerns that existed as part of the community forum. I'd like to say it was very well attended. It was not. We had representative from Ashback, which, you know, Diana Davis was there, and she expressed her comments that she had in a previous Ashpack meeting, and Kathy was there, and you know, the one thing we, you know, assured Diana was that we are providing special education services and or needs with our funding, and they're all being met. Kathy was there to explain that as well. So where does this really leave us? You know, we're investing heavily in summer learning. We'll be investing heavily in additional after-school programming next year and years beyond to try to close those learning gaps that we don't know what those gaps are yet, right? I mean, we've got to analyze some of the data in order to determine what gaps exist. But I am still recommending that we move forward with creating those half teams at the middle school to reduce class sizes at the middle school, the 7th and 8th grade. In addition, we're hiring a special education teacher to join those half teams. So that direct instruction will clearly benefit all kids, not just a couple of the teams, but as we're removing kids and creating these half teams, it's reducing class sizes for the full teams. And we just view the instruction, the direct instruction will have the most impact and the best impact on our students. So questions, we went over it more in detail in the last meeting, but I wanted to at least share out. I did, have a meeting for the community as requested by the board. And we didn't get a big turnout, but we had, I think, 20 people sign up and only, I don't know, what did we get, Kathy? 3 out of the 20. So it is what it is. So Monday in June.
Jim, I just had two quick questions. One, did you have any specific communications like with APEA leadership? AEA, that was a client reference. AEA leadership in terms of, union concerns, anything like that they were raising?
No, obviously they're excited to have more staff and reduce class sizes.
And my second question is just on the question of mental health. Are you comfortable with that? I think we've done a nice job increasing our staffing and commitment to providing better mental health supports across the district. Are you comfortable that we have the sufficient staffing now and other supports if that's necessary to support whatever our kids need in the fall?
I do, and I think Jen's on here and she can speak to that as well. But I do, and I think what I want to really emphasize is, as we move through the grant process, we will continually analyze the funding we have within the grants, right? So if we're not using up all of the ESSER 2 grant money because we're able to offset some other expenses within the operating budget, that money rolls forward, and now we have some flexibility with the ESSER 3 money to provide more support should we identify more supports being needed. So this is really pretty fluid for us in terms of the actual funding and the how we spend it. But yeah, we've increased even when we talk about just mental health, we're also talking about just health itself, right? We're adding, I think, a total of 0.6 nursing staff, Chris. I think overall from last year to next year, like we added those positions in again for next year. Our guidance staff at the Mendez School was not all 3 full-time. We didn't have originally. We're keeping those on at full-time staffing. So yeah, we're doing the things we need to do.
Hey Jim, was that nursing thing, was it a true add or was it just filling the positions we couldn't fill before? Because I know
we increased. Yeah, no, we increased it, but we've done it over a period of, so Claudia had a 1.6 at the Mendez School. It's a 2.0 now for next year. Yeah.
Okay. And do we have confidence we'll be able to fill it?
We have filled them all.
Oh, we have.
All
awesome.
Positions are filled. Yeah, we're excited. We added, what do we have? 2.6 Kelly at the high school now. So yeah, we're very excited. Audrey just hired her last nurse, I think yesterday. So I don't know if Chris, she's come across the table yet. But...
Tuesday, we hired her on Tuesday.
Oh, there you go. So yeah. So we feel good about that, Paul. Yeah.
So Jim, are you looking for a motion from us to approve the recommendations?
Yes, from last, of moving forward with half teams at the middle school.
And that's specific to the ESSER 3 funds?
Correct.
So I move to approve the guess I call it the expenditure of the ESSER 3 funds consistent with the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
And then all in favor, Aaron,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me, that passes. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have the, does the assistant superintendent have a report this evening?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Can I actually ask a quick question? This is actually kind of to piggyback a little bit on what Jim was talking about with the ESSER funds, but at the last meeting, Mike, we had, when we were talking about the summer programming, Mark had brought up, obviously it's a smaller program than we had hoped we could put together in terms of what grades it serves and whatnot. And I just didn't know if there was any forward movement on some of the suggestions that Mark had in terms of having specific resources available to certain students, or if there was any change on that.
Not at this point. What we're thinking about doing is making sure that we can have things available for students next year after school and before school. But in terms of the resources, all of the resources that we currently have in place for students will continue to be provided for the students during the summer, but we've not purchased additional resources for the summer.
So, but to that point, Mike, you brought it up the other night, and Claudia did with the there was a parent who asked that very specific question, right? So parents have reached out and we've connected them with teachers to provide access to the resources that we currently have.
Right.
So they can continue on like iReady
Yes.
or yeah.
Yes.
And we can publish something. I think that's a good point. I think that was Mark's point last time as well. We can still publish an email that says these resources are in it. We still have them over the summer. Should you need access to it, contact the building principal. But
Yes.
that was the
Yeah, I'm
greater
sorry.
point.
I must have misunderstood the question. I thought it was about whether or not we were purchasing any new
No,
resources.
no. It was making sure that
We're not. No.
right, it's making sure we had those resources of those students who might not otherwise be part of
Yes.
programming. So
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Tina, for remembering what I said. 'Cause
Some
I
of us need
didn't.
backups.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I read the blurb on the warrants?
the blurb.
That's what the email subject line says, the blurb. So here it is. Between June 3rd, 2021 and June 17, 2021, I, Lori Tosti, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $650,574,047. This includes the general fund expenses of $406,615.39 and revolving expenses of $187,697.98 and grants expenses of $56,261.10. I also signed off on $1,499,296.44 of payroll. So thank you for that. And then on to, I have to switch back to my agenda now after that. The minutes. So does anybody have anything on the May 20th, 2021?
Move to approve the minutes of May 20th, 2021 as presented.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And they're all in favor, Aaron? Tina?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And I. And then the next ones of June 3rd, 2021? Anybody?
Move to
I don't
approve
have
the-
anything, so if nobody else does, I'll take a motion to approve those.
I'll move to approve the minutes for the June 3rd, 2021 meeting as presented.
Second.
All in favor, Tina?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye for me as well, thank you. And then Jim, do we have any gifts and donations this evening?
We do. We just have one Planet Aid for $207.20.
And do we have a motion to approve that gift?
Moved.
Do we have a second?
Tina, second.
All in favor, Paul,
Aye.
Tina,
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye for me. And member updates. Anyone have a final update of the year?
I would just echo what you had said. The community sees it from whatever angle they're participating in school, and they don't see all the legwork and background work that occurred in the summer. The teachers having to pivot almost weekly into what they were doing all year long, and just Ed and Audrey and the nursing staff and the custodians and just everybody. And it's risky, like you said, to start naming groups, because the custodians are always left out, right? Nobody remembers everybody was just. So I mean, looking back on it, I couldn't be more proud of how everyone handled everything this year, and I can't believe how successful it was, honestly, even with knowing all the efforts. So thank you to everyone for all their efforts, from Jim all the way to the last person you'd expect to see in a building. They all did amazing jobs. The bus drivers, everybody did just an incredible job this year. So thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I would certainly echo comments, Laura, you made at the beginning of the meeting, all the ones you've just made. I think when you think about it, it's a testament to the people that work in our district and serve our kids every day. And every single one of them did their job. I mean, they did it under extraordinarily difficult circumstances, requiring an extraordinary amount of flexibility and effort. Bless you, Lori. I just thank you, every one of you, those who are on the screen, and the hundreds that are not, because I think what you've done is helped our community get through something. I'm thrilled that we were able to get to a point of that felt a little bit more like normalcy the last few months. And I think, from the community members I talked to, the fact that we were able to get there at the end of the year, I think is helping people appreciate how much of a challenge it was earlier in the year. And I've certainly seen a number of emails just thanking everybody associated with the school district for all their efforts during the year. And I don't know how to say thank you enough, but thank you.
And I would echo all of those sentiments, but also want to give a special shout out to Kelly and her staff at the high school. I had the opportunity and the privilege to attend graduation for the first time as a school committee member. And given the circumstances of this year, how quickly everything changed, and even so close to graduation when we didn't really know what was going to be allowed and what wasn't, the fact that you were able to still pull off a senior week for these seniors who have had quite the ride the past year and a half was really impressive. Shows not only your dedication to the day-to-day, but really your dedication to the students and making sure they have the full experience that high school should be, which includes a lot of these big activities. So kudos to you guys and being able to pull that off, because it was not an easy feat. There was a lot of work that went into it. Again, I think to echo what Paul said, that people don't always see the day-to-day, and just wanted to thank you for making that happen.
Any other updates before I move us into executive session?
As Barbara Duran would say, enough kumbaya.
Enough kumbaya. Ugh.
Here, I'll end it with a very anti-kumbaya. You all get my kids back in September, so be prepared.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so next up, the school committee, I move to enter into executive session under 21A3 to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. I declare not to return to open session, and this is regarding the Ashland Schools custodian and maintenance workers. So I will do the roll call. And
you need a second first. I'll second.
We need a second first. Thank you. You can't have a meeting without needing a little correction here. Who's got the second?
Paul had the second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you. And then all in favor, or it's a roll call vote. Paul,
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. We're heading over there. You guys got your link from the email that Jim sent earlier. And again, to all of you on the call, thank you for everything. And I hope you have the
Happy
best
summer.
summer. Have the best summer
Good
ever.
summer, everybody.
See you
Take some
later.
time off. I mean,